Today's story is called Family Ties. Jotham stretched and yawned, then rubbed his eyes. He had slept well this night, thanks to the kindness of Eliakim and his family. He took a deep breath to clear the night air from his lungs, then took a long look across the horizon. The sun was just rising above the barren hills to the east. Across the sky in the west, still showing through the blue daylight, was the star he'd fallen asleep watching. Jotham didn't remember ever seeing a star in the daytime before. Maybe that's the morning star Mother and Father talk about, he thought. Eliakim's family was up and working. His sons, all much older than Jotham, had already taken their sheep out to graze. Tabitha and her mother were busy making a stew for the midday meal when Jotham woke up. "Good morning, Jotham of Jericho," Tabitha's mother said. "Good morning, wife of Eliakim." "Has your long sleep made you well?" she asked. "Yes, I feel much better today." Tabitha had sat there giggling through all this, and now her mother scolded her. "Tabitha," she said, "what are you going on about?" Another giggle escaped Tabitha's lips, and then she said, "Your forgiveness, Mother, but I couldn't help notice that our new friend has some strange clothes." Her mother looked to where Tabitha was pointing. Then she too began to giggle. Jotham felt the blood rise in his cheeks, and he suddenly became very hot with embarrassment. He tried not to show any interest, but turned his head slightly, and out of the corner of his eye he checked his clothes. And then he saw what they were laughing about. Hanging from his belt and dragging behind him like some kind of strange shawl was a long narrow cloth that stretched back for more than 20 paces. I stuttered Jotham, pulling at the cloth, but Tabitha and her mother just laughed. Forgive us, Jotham," the mother said, unhooking the cloth and rolling it up. "This is the swaddling cloth in which we wrap newborn babies. It must have gotten caught in the blanket we gave you." Then, seeing that he was still embarrassed, she added, "Tabitha, why don't you show Jotham your father's camp and tell him of your ancestors?" "Yes, Mother," Tabitha said with the last of her giggles. Tabitha led Jotham around the many tents to her father, explaining to him who lived in each and how they were all related. Family heritage was very important, Jotham knew, and he too had to learn the names of relatives, many of whom he had never met. In between viewing tents and talk of family, Tabitha and Jotham spoke of many other things. Tabitha told him of the places they had traveled and said that she had even been to Jericho once. Jotham beamed at this, proud that she had been to the place of his birth. He told her of the many wonders of Jericho, even though he'd only been there once himself. "Are you the oldest of your brothers?" Tabitha asked at one point. Yes," Jotham stuttered. "I am the firstborn of my father." "You must be very proud," she said, then added, "and very sad at losing them." Jotham hung his head in shame because of the truth he was hiding in his heart. "Yes, I am," that is all he could say. That afternoon Eliakim called to Jotham to come and speak with him. "Tomorrow we will be leaving this place," he said, "and will travel west to the city of my fathers." Jotham frowned. The road he had been traveling ran east and west, and he was sure his family was on it. After a moment he said, "Then I must part with you tomorrow. I must travel east toward my family." Now it was Eliakim who frowned. "I do not think that wise, little one. There are many dangers on the road, and you are fully aware. I think you should come with us. You really don't know that your family chose to travel east, or even if they are still on the road at all." Jotham considered this for a few moments. He knew that Eliakim had the right to keep him there since he was young and all alone. In fact, he was pretty sure that's what his parents would want. But the thought of traveling to the west while his family went east was almost more than he could bear. "Please, Eliakim, allow me to search to the east. I am sure my family is within a day's walk of this place." Eliakim sighed. He too knew that the law permitted him this decision, but he didn't know if he had the heart to keep the boy from his family. "I will consider it," he said finally, though he was pretty sure he knew what the decision would have to be. After that, Jotham and Tabitha fetched water from a nearby stream and helped Tabitha's mother prepare the evening meal. It was while Jotham was pounding round dough into flat cakes that he first saw it. "Caravan!" someone yelled, both in excitement at seeing another clan and in warning in case it was not a friendly clan. "I wonder who they are," Tabitha said, jumping up to look. But Jotham didn't hear because he was already running. This caravan was coming up the road from the west. By the time Jotham got to the front of the string of camels, the caravan had already stopped. Eliakim was talking to their leader, still seated on his camel and dressed in a long woolen robe of many colors. Running up, out of breath, Jotham looked up at the other leader and blurted out, "Have you seen my parents?" Eliakim frowned at the interruption, but the caravan leader laughed. He had a kind face, Jotham thought, with a straight black beard. He was tall and his arms seemed as thick as a camel's neck. "And how would I know your parents?" the leader asked. Ignoring Jotham, Eliakim took back the conversation that was clearly his to make as a leader. He quickly explained the situation, and the other leader slowly shook his head. "No, we have not seen such a caravan," he said, "and we have come all the way from Jerusalem." Jotham grinned widely. Obviously, that meant that he had been traveling the right direction, toward the east, since this new caravan would have passed his family if they had traveled west toward Jerusalem. Eliakim understood as well to let out a deep sigh. "I suppose this means you want to travel east then?" he said to Jotham. Jotham just nodded rapidly, a grin lighting up his face. With an apologetic look, Eliakim turned back to the other leader. "Would you have room in your caravan for a small boy and a donkey?" he asked. At the mention of a donkey, Jotham's mouth dropped open, and for a moment he was afraid that Eliakim thought he'd been hiding such an animal somewhere. But the other leader smiled and said, "Of course, he may travel with us as far as he wishes." Eliakim turned to Jotham and said, "Tell Tabitha she is to give you the donkey her grandmother rode," and Jotham suddenly understood he was to receive it as a gift. "I can never pay you or thank you enough for your kindness," Jotham said, repeating what he'd heard his father say on many occasions. Eliakim nodded his acceptance of the thanks, and then said, "It is in the name of Jehovah that I treat you thus. Now go quickly. These camels are restless." Jotham ran his fastest back to the cook tent. There he found Tabitha and explained he was leaving and what her father had said. The donkey that Tabitha led him to was old and looked like a worn-out Persian carpet, but Jotham didn't care. It was the animal that would take him to his family, and that made it the best animal in the world. Quick goodbyes were said, and Tabitha's mother hastily packed some bread and meat for Jotham. But just as he was ready to climb onto the donkey, Jotham turned back to Tabitha. I'm not really the firstborn of my father," he said, his head hung in shame. Tabitha just smiled. "I know," she said softly. Jotham was pleased by her forgiving smile. "I will think of you every day," he said. "And I will prepare bed for the time when we meet again," she answered. They smiled an awkward smile at each other. Then Jotham once again turned back toward the caravan, and before he knew it, Jotham was on his way east, riding on the back of a donkey that was twice his age and at the end of the line of camels that stretched as far as he could see. In the hours that followed, his heart was as full of peace as his belly was of Tabitha's bread. He just knew that within a day he'd be back with his family. And that's when the caravan suddenly stopped, and the leader rode back to where Jotham sat on his little donkey. The leader jumped off his camel, and in one swift motion slapped Jotham hard across the face, knocking him to the ground. Jotham looked up in shock, his ears ringing and blood running from his mouth. The leader stood over him with a sneer on his face and the point of his sword sticking in Jotham's throat. "Now, little one," he said, mocking Eliakim's name for Jotham, "we shall see what kind of price you bring." That's kind of scary, isn't it? Well, we'll see what happens tomorrow.